So you've seen Lords of the Fallen. I saw Lords of the Fallen briefly because I was on the All Access stage, and they played a little bit of it. Two things that I liked about it. The movement seemed fun. He had like a long-ranged weapon, so you could kind of smack things from afar. And something else I noticed about, I played Fable Legends today, and the cloaks in both of those games are just gorgeous. Yeah. It's just something about like the end. I don't know, like I play a lot of MMOs with cloaks, and it's always just like this giant jagged thing that like clips through your legs as you run. Or like if you have a weapon or something, it'll clip through the back of that. And everything is just flowing gorgeously in this new generation. So you don't necessarily have to open with the cloaks or the costume items. But let's start with who you were, what your abilities were, what your class was.
Right. So I was a magic user. I don't remember if they called it a wizard or a mage or a sorcerer.
Could you choose in the demo?
So somebody just got done playing, and I just like literally we were kind of tight on time, so I just picked it up and went with it. I had a staff, but unlike many games where you have staffs and can cast magic, I used it like a sword. I mean, so the backstab animation is you stab a guy in the gut and you blow him up with a lightning bolt, and that felt really, really, really cool. But I have to say, Brandon Jones, I feel like Lords of the Fallen is a Dark Souls game made for you.
Is it like Fisher-Price Dark Souls?
No.
Is it like Dark Souls for babies?
No, I'm gonna make a judgment call here. I don't.
For the record, I love Dark Souls. I've played ever since Demon Souls. I've been a really huge fan of the franchise. I've played it a lot. Right, Ryan?
It's Demons.
Demons is Souls.
I don't even mean that as an insult. I mean that as
but there is a comparison, and we haven't talked about that. I mean, it's something that, I mean,
Absolutely.
even some of the guys in the background while we were watching All Access were like Dark Souls when they saw the gameplay. So.
I don't think you can have a conversation about Lords of the Fallen without bringing up Dark Souls. It is very liberally stealing from Dark Souls.
But Dark
in so
Souls
many
is,
ways.
you know, for lack of a better word, darker. It definitely feels like, of what I've seen so far, the Lords of the Fallen is a little more classic D&D fantasy based.
Yeah, I mean, in Dark Souls, you can play as this shriveled, hollowed human being. In Lords of the Fallen, it doesn't matter which class you are. You are this giant, hulking dude in thick armor. You got tattoos all over your face. So it kind of reminds me of the Gears dudes.
I was going to say the Marcus Phoenix if he was a mage.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's funny. Yeah, it definitely had that kind of, I mean, Dark Souls is kind of, you know, distant and cold, which again is why it just kind of, you know, cripples me every time I play it. Whereas this feels like, I don't know, a little more fun and adventurous and a little more based in like just get in there and have action. And so where were you? What were you doing in the demo?
So I was in a dungeon, and I fought these things that they reminded me of the Flood. They looked very much like the Flood from Halo. Just these sort of zombie-like, very fleshy creatures. They had really nasty teeth. My favorite thing about them is they made this like gooey sound every time they walked, and they sounded sick. You know what I mean? Even if they were off camera, you were like, something gross is coming up, and I thought that was cool. But they were very, very easy to kill, and maybe they were easy to kill because the controls are Dark Souls. You use the L1 button to block. You use the R1 button for a light swing. You use the R2 button for a heavy swing, and it feels a lot like Dark Souls. And that,
If it ain't broke.
If it ain't broke. One thing that I thought was interesting, I thought it was cool at first, and then I hated it, is as soon as I killed the Flood guys, this giant hulking dude in armor started charging at me. And they made it very obvious that I stood no chance. I mean, this guy would stab you once, and 90% of your life was gone. And so I was scared, and he never lifted his shield. And so I thought to myself, how am I going to take him down? And you're in this sort of circular area, and in the middle, there is this hole, and there are wooden planks covering it. And what you can do is you're not heavy enough to break through those wooden planks, but this guy is, and so you can lead him over there, he'll fall, and he'll instantly die. I was like, cool, I'm using the environment as a weapon. However, where all broke for me is I encountered a bunch of other enemies just a few steps later, and I brought them all back to this hole, and there were no wooden planks there anymore, and they can see the hole right in front of them, and they're not zombies, they were more humanoid, looked more intelligent. They just walked right in the hole over and over and over again. And I'm like, that kind of broke it for me.
Did any of the guys there see you doing that? And we're like, yeah, well, that...
No, I was just on my own. So I'm going to get a little bit critical.
Oh,
that's all right.
All right.
I'm gonna talk some smack.
That's what I'm here for, man.
All right.
I want you to tell it like it is.
I feel like the people that made Lords of the Fallen fell in love with Dark Souls and desperately wanted to make something exactly like it, but almost entirely missed the point. And that sounds brutal, but I think it'll still be a fun game. I think if you like Souls and you like that combat and you like that challenge, it's interesting. What Dark Souls has is sort of that element of mystery to it, where I feel like I'm sort of uncovering this world, and I feel like Lords of the Fallen doesn't have that. I felt like, oh, these enemies look cool, but they don't feel like they belong to the same world. Like these hulking Black Knights and these like zombie flood-like creatures feel like they're just sort of checking off like fantasy tropes. It feels like it's borrowing too much and it's not creating its own identity. As you notice, as we're talking about Lords of the Fallen, I feel like I desperately need to make all of these comparisons, and that's what it's missing. When I play Dark Souls, when I'm immersed in that world, I'm not reminded of anything else. And I think that's a very hard thing to do.
And you're constantly wondering when you're playing Dark Souls. One of the things that I definitely do appreciate about that series is there's a lot of enemies, a lot of places you go to, and you think, what the hell is happening here? What is this place? How do I fight this enemy? You have to find out the hard way. Yeah, and a lot of stuff in that game is not predictable. It's a gorgeous looking game, and the art design is really good from what I've seen.
Right.
But yeah, there's not a lot of mystery to it. Like you're saying, mystery is a good word.
Yeah, and
do you think you have yet to just see more of the game? Do you think that's a game that could change that up, or maybe you were just seeing an early portion of it?
Absolutely. I mean, I did not play very much of it at all. But it just taking so much so immediately and having me recognize that so quickly, I feel like sets that tone. You know what I mean? Like it would really have to show me a bunch of crazy new things for me to kind of get away from that.
So if I could play Dark Souls 2 DLC at the show or Lords of the Fallen, you'd say stick with Dark Souls.
I think so.
Okay.
I think so.
Jones?
Well, okay. You tell me how this sounds, because we were talking about Dark Souls, and you said something that you don't like is, you don't have that much time to play video games. And so
Right.
when you do, you like to feel that you made progress. And with Dark Souls and the bonfires, if you die, you're going to end up doing things over and over and over again. It's just the nature of the game. And I was talking to Lords of the Fallen developer, and he says his whole goal was to keep the challenge of Dark Souls, but to make it more appreciated by more people. And one of the ways that they're doing that is checkpoints are a lot more lenient than they would be in Demon Souls and Dark Souls 1 for sure. Maybe not Dark Souls 2, but the other two. But in the Souls games, what makes those checkpoints work is you have to find them. And you feel this sort of sense of relief when you see an unkindled bonfire, like, I made it. In Lords of the Fallen, there are just video game checkpoints.
Right.
I die, all right, I am back at this arbitrary point that some developer has given me. It feels artificial. It doesn't.
Yeah.
It's very clearly not something baked into the world. And that kind of, it's not as special, I guess.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, it's kind of tough to tell as far as difficulty is concerned with just like an E3 demo. But
Absolutely.
Maybe a game you're kind of interested in. You'll maybe check out later on.
Yeah, I think it's a good game, and it's something I want to see more of. I just hope it can surprise me.
Well, we'll see when we see more stuff. All right, thank you for letting me know. Lords of the Fallen.
Did you parry anything?
No.
No parries.